It happened on the first hole, not the back nine. Not a pressure moment late in the round when everything was on the line and the gallery had built to maximum size and the weight of the tournament was fully present. The first hole. Before anything had been decided, before a single score had been posted, before the competitive reality of the day had had any time to establish itself, Charlie Woods was standing over his tee shot. Mid-backswing and a camera clicked, not a subtle sound. Not the soft, almost inaudible click that serious golf photographers produce when they have learned, through years of working in tournament environments, exactly how to capture a shot without entering a player's process. A full, sharp, unambiguous camera click at the precise moment Charlie's club was changing direction at the top of his swing. The gallery went still. Charlie did not. He completed the swing. The ball left the face and traveled exactly where Charlie had intended it to travel, clean, committed. The specific quality of ball flight that sources near the first tee describe as indistinguishable from what Charlie produces on a range when nothing is at stake and nobody is watching and the process is running in its most undisturbed state. The click had produced nothing inside Charlie's swing, absolutely nothing. And Charlie, walking off the first tee with the same pace he uses on every hole, left behind a gallery that was processing two things simultaneously: the quality of the tee shot and the specific unsettling realization that what they had just witnessed was not composure under distraction. It was the absence of distraction itself. The click had not entered Charlie's process. There was no address for it inside what Charlie was doing. Before we go further, if you understand that the most revealing moments in competitive golf are sometimes not the shots, but what happens when something tries to interrupt them, this channel was built for you. I have covered this sport for 30 years. The golf code is for people who follow golf at the level where these details matter. Hit subscribe right now. Share this with one person who would feel the weight of what I am about to describe. Leave a comment below. I read every single one. Now back to that first tee, back to the click. And back to what Charlie's response, or more precisely, his non-response, set in motion for the rest of that tournament. Here is what a camera click during a backswing actually does to a competitive golfer. Not at the amateur level, at this level, the U.S. Junior Amateur, the most significant junior golf event in the country. Players who have competed for years in serious tournament environments, who have been through qualifying rounds and regional events, and every step of the competitive ladder that leads to this specific field. A camera click during a backswing is one of the most disruptive things that can happen in competitive golf. Not because of the volume, the sound itself is modest. Because of the timing. The backswing is the moment when a player's entire competitive system is committed to a sequence. Every variable has been processed. The target has been identified. The shape has been selected. The feel of the swing has been programmed. Everything that needed to happen before the club moved has happened. And then something external enters the sequence at exactly the moment the sequence has no remaining capacity to process it. What happens next depends entirely on the competitor. Most players, serious players, well-prepared players, players who have competed in significant events enough times to have developed real tournament composure, show something. A micro-flinch. A slight disruption of the sequence at the top. A fractional alteration in the transition from backswing to downswing that the player immediately feels and the ball flight immediately reflects. Not always dramatically. Sometimes the shot is fine. But the disruption is real and the player knows it was real and that knowledge exists as a small but present weight in the process that produces the next shot. Charlie showed nothing. Not because Charlie managed the distraction. Not because Charlie heard the click and suppressed a reaction through competitive discipline or mental training or any form of the active management that a sports psychologist would teach a player to apply in exactly this situation. Because the click found no channel inside what Charlie was doing. The backswing sequence was sealed. The click existed somewhere outside the seal, and the transition from backswing to downswing happened exactly as it would have happened without the click because the click was simply not inside the process that produced it. Now let me tell you what the photographer did next, because this is where the story becomes something unexpected. The photographer, a source who has covered junior golf tournaments for 11 years and who has accidentally produced camera sounds during backswings more than once in that time, described their reaction to what happened as something they found genuinely difficult to process. They have seen players react to accidental clicks in every way a player can react. Anger, visible disruption, a look in the direction of the sound, a reset routine, a brief conversation with the caddy afterward that communicates what the player is managing internally. Every version. Charlie walked off the tee without looking in their direction. Not as a statement. Not as a performance of indifference designed to communicate to the gallery or the photographer or anyone else that the click had not affected him. The photographer described it as the specific behavior of someone for whom looking in their direction would not have occurred as a relevant action. Because the click was not a thing that had happened inside Charlie's experience of the swing. It had simply happened somewhere outside, in a parallel reality that the swing did not share. The photographer stood there for a moment after Charlie walked away, then looked at the person standing nearest them and said something that the person has not forgotten. They said, "I have been doing this for 11 years. That has never happened before." Here is what Charlie's competitors saw from that first tee. And this is the part of the story that determined what the rest of the tournament looked like. Every player in that field had been on a practice range, had been in the caddy area, had watched warm-ups and pre-round routines, had formed the specific assessments that serious shot is hit. They had their read on Charlie. And the read, the honest, professional, experience-based read that any serious junior golfer develops about the most watched player in their field, included an expectation. Not about the ball striking or the short game or any technical element of Charlie's game. About the process, the expectation was that Charlie's process was exceptional but human. That under sufficient disruption, the right click at the right moment, the right gallery reaction at the wrong time, the right accumulation of pressure in the right circumstances, something would eventually enter the process that the process could not fully seal against. That was the read. The first hole camera click ended it, not because of the click itself, because of what Charlie's non-response communicated to every competitor who saw it. That the process was not exceptional but manageable. That it was not a process that was working very well at excluding external disruption. It was a process that did not register external disruption as something requiring exclusion. The seal was not tight. The seal did not exist. There was simply nothing inside the swing that the click could enter. Now I want to tell you about what happened to one specific competitor who watched that first tee shot from close enough to see everything. Because this is where the story of the click becomes a story about something larger than one swing on one hole. This competitor, a player who had done serious preparation for this tournament and who had developed a specific competitive strategy for the possibility of facing Charlie, described watching that first tee shot to a coach afterward in terms that the coach has described to me as the most honest post-observation assessment he has heard from a junior player in years. The player said, "The strategy does not work. Not we need to adjust the strategy. Not the strategy needs refinement. The strategy does not work." Because the strategy, like every assumption that enough accumulated pressure, applied in the right way at the right moments, would eventually produce a visible variation in Charlie's process, a slightly longer routine, a look at the leaderboard, a micro-flinch at a critical moment that told you the pressure had found the channel. The click on the first hole told the competitor that the channel does not exist. Not that Charlie had sealed the channel very effectively, that the channel was simply not part of the architecture. And a strategy built around finding a channel that is not there is not a strategy that needs adjustment. It is a strategy that needs to be abandoned and rebuilt from the ground up. The competitor went home from that tournament and started rebuilding. Here is what Earl Woods built into Tiger that explains what every competitor is discovering about Charlie. Earl understood something about distraction in competitive golf that most coaching frameworks treat as a problem to be managed. Earl did not treat it as a problem to be managed. He treated it as a condition to be eliminated. The keys jangled during backswings. The bags dropped at the moment of impact. The coughs manufactured at the top of the swing. Not to train Tiger to manage distraction, to remove the architecture that made distraction possible. To engineer a competitive process so completely sealed from external input that the concept of distraction stopped being applicable. You cannot distract something that does not have a slot for distraction. That is what Earl built. That is what Tiger carried through 30 years of the most scrutinized competitive career in the history of professional golf. Galleries, cameras, media, scandal, surgery, the entire watching world present for every mistake, and a process that had no slot for any of it. Charlie was not engineered that way. Earl died before Charlie was old enough to receive the engineering. Charlie did not sit through manufactured pressure sessions or deliberate disruption designed to remove the architecture. Charlie watched Tiger live without the architecture for 15 years. Result of the engineering, the finished state, the sealed process. The swing that completes identically whether a camera clicks or doesn't, because the swing does not have a category for camera clicks. On the first hole of the U.S. Junior Amateur, a camera clicked. And 30 years of Earl's work and Tiger's carrying and Charlie's watching revealed itself in the most ordinary possible way. Charlie completed his swing, walked off the tee, did not look at the photographer, so here is where I leave you. One question, real answer only. Do you believe what Charlie has, the process with no slot for distraction, no channel for external input, is something that can be built by any competitor who works hard enough and prepares seriously enough? Or is this the specific inheritance that only arrives the way Charlie received it, through 15 years of proximity to someone who already had it, and that no amount of deliberate construction can fully work, not a pressure management system, something more specific, something that required a conversation with a person nobody expected them to call. That conversation happened. What was said is the most significant competitive development in junior golf this season that nobody has reported. That story is coming.